Welcome to the ThunderCast, your martial athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hudnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week, so keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. You can follow us on Twitter at ThunderCast_pod. Go down to the description. Just click the links for all of our social media platforms. But particularly, please go subscribe to the ThunderCast YouTube channel because we have special YouTube exclusive episodes that go up there. So if you're just listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you're going to miss that stuff. So you do not want to miss any of the great content that we have over there. You'll miss all of the episodes of Inside the Thunder, which are always awesome, and I love hearing the feedback from those. It's great to talk to some of our former athletes. Russ, we've got a jam-packed episode this week. The breakdown series is going to conclude this week with the quarterbacks, a highly discussed position group amongst fans during the offseason. So we're going to break it all down for you. We're going to give some great opinion and some awesome insight. And we're going to give you 5 things. Of course, we're going to go around the herd, and we have a special guest joining us in a little bit. We've got Herald Dispatch herd beat writer Luke Creasy coming on to talk about what he's seen out of the herd this offseason, both spring and summer, and where those real competitions lie as we head ever closer towards week 1. So, Russ, let's waste no more time. Let's get into it after this quick word from our sponsors at 304carwreck.com. If you've been injured in a car wreck, visit 304carwreck.com on the web or on Facebook. What happens when an Ohio driver crashes into a West Virginia driver in Kentucky? That can be a mess. But if you can dream it up, Jason and Matt have probably been there, done that, and gotten their clients paid. Don't fight the insurance companies alone. Contact Jason and Matt at 304carwreck.com. Russ, let's start it off, man. We've got a lot to cover, so give me 5 things that every herd fan needs to know this week.
Before I get those 5 things, happy birthday, KD.
Thanks, man. That one slid through the cracks on me. I wasn't going to put that out there, but 44 never looked so good.
Yeah.
At least for another 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I'm the youngin' of the group here. 5 things every herd fan needs to know this week, as always, brought to you by Ignite Link, the Tri-State's premier IT management team. We have so many things this week that could have been a thing and could have been around the herd that some of these they could have been in either. So here's the 5 that we have. The big green events. We recently had Paint the Capital City Green. It was this past Thursday. That was a great thing. I saw well attended, saw all the tables full. It was in the hangar up at the Yeager Airport for the flight school. Looked great. Always a great time.
Yeah, it's a super cool event because it's always a either sold out or near sold out event. And we've talked about this before. It gives you an opportunity to get a bigger foothold in Charleston and try to branch out a little outside of that Cabell County, Putnam County, Kanawha County like line towards Charleston. So it's always a cool event.
Yeah. In that spirit, the reason I bring this up as a thing is we've got a couple more big green events like that. This Saturday is the reverse raffle that has been so big that it's been moved over to the Big Sandy, or now Mountain Health Arena. It'll be over there, and that's Saturday on August 19th. You've got Girardi Mercer, friend of the ThunderCast.
Yeah.
You've got Chad Pennington, and now added to that, Byron Leftwich. He's been on the docket for the last couple of weeks. Tickets are still available, but they're running scarce. So if you're interested in that, you need to get with the Big Green and book that. Coming up on August 29th, Culinary Playbook, and this is at Christopher's Eats, to where you are going to be waited on. It'll be a buffet style dinner, but you're going to be waited on for your drinks and everything else by the herd coaches. So you're going to see your favorite coaches coming right up and interacting with you at your table, taking care of your drink orders and more.
Wow. I was wondering what that was, right? I didn't dive into the details of that event because I was thinking, wait a minute, did they put together like a cookbook or something from like, Huff's favorite foods, right? Or Dan Tony's favorite dishes. And they just made a collection. I thought, wow, that's a pretty interesting idea. But this is a completely off the grid idea that I did not see coming. And one I think is pretty cool. I have not heard about that before. I'm sure that's something that has happened in the history of sports and, fundraisers, but what a neat idea. That's pretty
It
cool.
is.
You gonna go to that one?
No, it's on August the 29th.
Oh, well,
And
you're not going to celebrate your birthday dinner at the Culinary Playbook?
no, I would love to, but my birthdays now exist solely for my kids,
Right.
and they're the only one looking forward to my birthday. To me, it's just another day.
Yeah.
I'm not getting a special dinner. I'm not eating desserts right now. So,
Right.
but they're going to want cake. They're going to want everything. So I'm going to spend it at home with my kids.
I can dig that, man, because as you just mentioned, it's my birthday today. And for the last couple of weeks, whenever Jen is asking Cooper, like, what do you want to get dad for his birthday? He just always says things that he wants.
Yeah.
He's like, well, dad wants like 12 balloons for his birthday, or dad wants.
He sure does.
I'm like, brother, you get whatever you want.
Yeah, that's right. That's the way I do it.
It might as well be your birthday because,
Yeah. I mean, it's another day for us at this point,
No, while I do appreciate the birthday wishes, I have received some today from both Herd fans and friends of the ThunderCast that was a little surprising. I will say I'm very appreciative of that. I thank folks for thinking of me today because, hey, at the end of the day, I say it all the time, I'm just a knucklehead behind the microphone talking about the Herd. So I'm glad that I resonate with some people to the extent that they want to at least say happy birthday. So thank you.
On to number 2. Herd alumnus Alex Millette signs with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, Herd all-timer, I will add. Alex Millette signs with the Detroit Lions. And Alex got an opportunity out of Marshall with the Indianapolis Colts, then was released there, went to the XFL and performed superbly in the XFL and has now earned a spot or an opportunity in Detroit. And of course, he teams up with Stephen Gilmore, who's up there in Detroit. So a little Herd flavor up there in the NFC North. Can't say I appreciate that as a Packers fan, but I can certainly appreciate our Herd guys getting an opportunity to play in the league. I love that. Absolutely love it. Alex is a great dude too, by the way. I've known him for many years. I've conversed with him over the course of several years. A casual acquaintance. He's not like a super good friend of mine, but every interaction I've ever had with him and his family have been awesome. So I'm really happy for him.
Number 3, more alumni news. Alex Bazzie will be the head football coach at the University of Charleston. There's more to this second part, but go ahead and talk about Bazzie and UC.
Wow, I didn't think I missed. I just thought he was a position coach at UC.
Maybe he is.
I didn't know he was going to be the head guy. I was thinking he was just like a D-line coach, maybe.
The way I was taking this was that he was
Wow.
the coach. We'll tweet out the actual story because this might be the only mistake we ever make on the ThunderCast.
D-line outside linebackers coach at UC.
Well, so, he's the head D-line coach. That's what I meant.
But still, awesome, right? Because Bazzie is another guy that if you remember that era of Herd play, 2011, I remember we were in the hospital. Jennifer was giving birth to Cooper, and Marshall was playing in the St. Petersburg Bowl against FIU. Mm-hmm. And FIU has T.Y. Hilton on that roster. It's a kick return. Hilton's coming, through trying to make some moves. Alex Bazzie, like a wild man, comes through and absolutely obliterates T.Y. Hilton. And it was that moment that number 53 blew on the radar for me and probably most of the Herd fan base, and went on to have a really, really productive career for Marshall. Was a CFL guy for a long time, actually had a couple of stints in the NFL too, and now he's in the coaching ranks. Man, I love that. I absolutely love that. Really tight with our buddy DJ Hunter. Him and Alex are really good buddies. They used to host a podcast together called the Transition Podcast, and every now and then they'll put out an episode, but I'm really happy for Alex too, man. Good. I like it when good things happen to good people, and Alex is a good dude.
So he wasn't a wild man, just like his Twitter handle said. He was a bad man Bazzie. So the other part of this, alumni making some splashes in coaching news. Tamar Slay will be the head basketball coach at Carmel Christian in Matthews, North Carolina.
That's pretty cool. I mean, I know it was a quick in and quick out. He was announced as a Herd assistant coach, and then he was, some things happened and he wasn't able to keep that job. It was nothing that he did. It wasn't like performance based or anything like that. It was just like life instances that caused him to have to, not continue with the Herd. But anytime your all timers get those kind of jobs, man, you love it. And Tamar's a good dude too. And again, you just love it when good things happen to good people. He's very much a Herd first guy. I mean, it's the Herd for Tamar, and I'm glad that he's able to maintain a coaching position, get right back into the game, so to speak. And he's got a youngster who's, I think he's class of 2025, maybe 2024. I can't remember.
I think it's 2024.
Okay, so he's been offered by the Herd too. We'll see. I mean, love to continue that lineage of Slays in Huntington playing for the Herd. But congratulations to Tamar on this head man role down at Carmel Christian.
Number 4, the conference schedule for women's basketball has been released, and you had noted that they missed that. Was it 4 games in a row?
We didn't get the brutal 4-game road swing this year. We do get a 4-game homestand, and we get a 3-game road swing. So not terrible. It's going to be a pretty decent home slate. I don't have it all in front of me, but just going off of memory, they're going to open the Kim Stevens Sunbelt era at home at the CAM. So that you would expect will be a really well-attended game. Hopefully all of these are. Honestly, it would be really great if they can, pump some big numbers up and we make the CAM an intimidating space, especially with the brand of basketball that Coach Stevens is poised to bring to Huntington, and these roster moves that we've talked about already, coupled with some of the players that are returning. I won't say it's a uber favorable schedule, but I can't say that they didn't do us any favors either, because when you're going a wholesale change like we're seeing this year, who knows if it's favorable or not. But you're going to have plenty of opportunity to see the Herd, and I really hope for that 4-game home stretch that we're particularly able to pack it for the 2 straight weeks. That'd be awesome.
And our 5th thing, moving over with the basketball court, the men's basketball schedule has been released. They released the conference schedule, and then later that day or the next day, it was just the entire schedule. A couple of things I want to hit up here. October 29th and November the 1st will be the 2 fans' first games. Then they open with Queens, who they played on their opener at Queens last year, and that's on November the 6th. And then they travel on November the 10th to the Greenbrier to play Radford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
Yep,
that's where I want to because that sparked some conversation of should we be doing this at other areas around the state, and we kind of alluded to that a little bit when I think it was a coach's tour or something. We were talking about that. But could you imagine maybe playing a women's basketball game up in Parkersburg, in Kim Stevens' neck of the woods, or putting one, down in Beckley or something? I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea. I think that could be something that could catch on, and you don't necessarily want to take games away from the CAM, right? But if you just do one, it's like, all right, this year women's basketball is going to go to Parkersburg. Men's basketball is going to play at the Greenbrier. Like, I could see how that would be a nice draw for folks around the state to drum up extra excitement. Folks that love Herd basketball that just for, whatever the reasons are, just can't ever make a trip to Huntington, and they get to see the Herd in person. I think that's great, and I really think this is a cool thing to do. I really do.
After that, they go to the Cayman Islands Classic that we were talking about, and immediately when they get done with that, they're going to play at Lexington, playing the Kentucky Wildcats.
Yeah, I think that's the one that most fans are excited for as far as an out-of-conference game. Obviously, you get to go to Rupp and have an opportunity to do something special against a marquee blue blood program. There's no arguing that. I don't care if Kentucky falls off a cliff the season before. They are a blue blood program, and if you can go in and beat them in Rupp Arena, it's going to make headlines. It's going to be a momentum-building win. It's very much like going to Notre Dame and getting that win in football.
Yeah.
And I know that it'll be well-attended. These games just seem so natural. 90 minutes down the road, it just seems like it should happen fairly often. And I know we've played them several times in recent years, but it just feels good. This is that one marquee game that you should have whenever you can get it.
Yeah.
They're probably never going to come to Huntington. So what? You get to go 90 minutes away and interrupt. And we have fans, friends that are fans, Herd alums that are also Kentucky fans. And when we shared that info, they were like, well, that's a must go.
Yeah.
Like immediately. It wasn't like, well, we'll see if I can work the schedule out. It was like, nope, Herd at Kentucky, I'm there. So I'm for that too. I love that. I love that game against Kentucky.
So if you're looking for these schedules, Herd Zone or the Herd Zone app has these. For women's basketball, it's got the conference schedule up, and for the men, it's got the entire schedule up. So head on over to herdzone.com or look at it on the app if you want to see the full slate.
Yeah, and of course, if you're going to buy tickets to these games, please buy all your tickets through herdzone.com or 800 The Herd. It's really easy, and you want to directly give that revenue to Marshall, right? Mm-hmm. Don't just immediately go to StubHub or something like that. Only exhaust those avenues or explore those avenues if the ticket allotments at Herd Zone are exhausted. So we're going to keep putting that out there because we need to get folks in the habit of going to herdzone.com or calling 800 The Herd first and foremost.
Yeah.
Russ, killer 5 things. A lot of great alumni news. Really, this was really an alumni-centric 5 things with Millette and Bazzi and Tamar Slay. I love hearing about that stuff. And these events that like the Paint the Capital City Green, the reverse raffle is going to be awesome. I mean, it is going to be really cool. And then the release of the basketball schedules. This is getting blood flowing for some folks. Like, it's real now, guys. We got soccer coming up soon. We're going to talk about that here in a little bit when we go around the Herd. But for right now, let's transition into, we're going to switch it up a little bit. We're going to go the feature story first. We're going to continue and finalize the breakdown series with the quarterbacks right now and get the deets on what's going on in that room. Very, very extreme amount of conversation and opinions floating around, and everybody's got their preferences. So hell, let's just give everybody all the details about what's going on in this room from a statistical standpoint, experience standpoint, and the moves that were made. Quarterbacks coached by Clint Trickett, second season as offensive coordinator / quarterbacks coach, but he was on Huff's original inaugural staff, so he's been here all 3 years with Huff. Phil Steele rank for the Herd quarterbacks, Russ, number 7 overall in the Sun Belt Conference. It gets a little bit better when you start talking about the East because they're 4th in the East, behind, of course, Coastal Carolina, Georgia Southern, 2 very pass-heavy offenses. And then Georgia State gets the nod above us, too, with Darren Granger, even though we beat them head-to-head last season. So interesting take there, I will say, but okay. 2022 breakdown just for general knowledge. This Herd offense averaged 192 pass yards per game across Columbia and Fancher, right? 16 touchdowns in 13 games, just 0.8 touchdowns per game, 10 interceptions in 13 games, 0.77 interceptions per game. So the touchdown to interception ratio is a lot closer than I care for it to be, and most fans are going to care for it to be. But the thing that really stands out to you is sub 200 passing yards per game over the course of the season. We've documented the reasons, but it's still out there.
I got to clarify something there. You said 16 touchdowns in 13 games. That's a little
I'm
more
sorry.
than,
yeah, it's 1.23. Yeah, I did that backwards. I'm sorry. Now that, yes, immediately I see that I'm wrong, and I won't make another mistake. But anyway, you still want to see that overall touchdown number as a team.
Right.
You got to be north of 20. You got to be north of 20. Interceptions, they're going to come and go. We expect those to mitigate a little bit with the overall development of Cam Fancher, right? Because not all of these were attributed to him anyway. Currently on the roster, Russ, 2023, 6 quarterbacks. And listen to this class status breakdown. 1 true freshman, 3 redshirt freshmen, 1 redshirt sophomore, and 1 grad transfer. Not a single junior, redshirt junior, senior, or redshirt senior on the roster. How young is this quarterback room right now? And, of course, famously, we talked about bringing in 3 quarterbacks a year ago with, Pennington, Harrison, and Zamora. But yowza, this is a really young room. Exhausted eligibility, Henry Columbia, 938 passing yards last year, 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. 43 carries for negative 18 rushing yards, 0 rushing touchdowns on the season for Henry. Portal out, redshirt freshman last year. Cade Cunningham hits the portal, lands at Memphis to reunite with Tim Cramsey. And then Pete Zamora hits the portal basically shortly after the bowl game and ends up at Tusculum University. I don't know if that's a D2 or a D3 school. I don't know. I just know that he's at Tusculum. Portal in, we bring in a couple of guys. Grad transfer TJ McMahon comes over from Rice. We'll get into the stats later. And then redshirt freshman Colin Parachek comes in from Morehead State. And we talked about his story before. Really interesting prospect coming out of the state of Michigan. The COVID season, or the COVID kind of ruined his senior season. Mm-hmm. And he's a really intriguing prospect, lands at Morehead State, and then ultimately now heads over to the Herd to fit in with our quarterback room.
Yeah, I was just going to say, we got that info from one of our listeners, had given us that breakdown and everything, not directly to us, but we saw where they had done that. And I just want to say real quick, I saw him at Fans First, just messing around. He and the other quarterbacks were throwing to each other. He made multiple one-handed, back-handed catches over his head when they're just messing around. Now, doing that in a game, probably not. You're not saying he's going to be a great wide receiver immediately to do that. It just shows that he's got a lot of athleticism.
Yeah. Statistically speaking, or not statistically, measurables wise, he's the second largest quarterback on the roster by, and he's off the pace of number 1 by 1 pound. Otherwise, he's tied for first. But only one incoming freshman to the class. That's Jack Shearholz, comes from Summit County, Colorado. Another really interesting prospect. As a matter of fact, they posted a picture of the quarterbacks, the other day. They were all grouped together on the field. And I saw that one of our followers on Twitter was like, who is this number 17? Look at the massive arms on this guy. And it was Jack Shearholz, the true freshman. So let's talk about the movement, Russ. We always do this. Give me your thoughts on the movement. Who we lost and who we brought in. What's it say to you?
Well, we lost Columbi, but we had kind of already lost him for the second half of the season anyway. Cam took the position and really didn't give it back.
Right.
There might have been a play here or there, but Columbi wasn't even at the bowl game. So it seemed like at the end, we'll talk more about this later, there wasn't a whole lot of loss. We just brought a bunch in. We brought in TJ McMahon, who has experience at Rice as a Division I starter. And then we brought in Parachek, who played at a lower level but has experience as a starter. And that's kind of it. Everybody else was here in-house or, brought in as a true freshman. But not as much movement as you would think.
Well, I mean, I guess seeing, one guy exhaust eligibility, 2 more leave, that's 3. You carried 7 last year, and we're only carrying 6 this year. And you bring in 2. So you're overall -1, right? So you just didn't replace, the quarterback basically that exhausted eligibility. And look, I'm not going to talk down about Henry at all because he was thrust into a bad situation from the viewpoint of they were counting on Rasheen to be healthy. Now, ultimately, Kalen had a freaking great year. And so
but they had both of those in mind to have,
right.
And
that's what I'm saying. So you lose a massive weapon going into week 1. And even though you're playing Norfolk State, that's not a big deal. But you look ahead to week 2, and now they're like, crap, man, we're without Rasheen Ali going into South Bend, Indiana. And this is why I'll never talk down about Henry Columbi, right? He might have lost the starting job midway through because it just wasn't working. Marshall's a 3-3 team. You have to do something to see if you can put some momentum together and go on a win streak, which we were ultimately able to do. But Russ, forever, when we talk about Herd football and you talk about big games, you're going to talk about beating Notre Dame. And it was Henry Columbi that was the starting quarterback that went into South Bend, Indiana and beat Notre Dame. He's the guy that threw the late game touchdown to Devin Miller, right?
Yeah.
Cam got in that game, right? He played. They had packages for him. But it was Henry Columbi who started that game and played the lion's share of the plays in that game and led the Herd to victory. So forever, I, as a Herd fan, am indebted to him for providing me and everybody else with that victory. It's unfortunate that it ultimately didn't work out for him, but for the good of the team and the good of the program, the switch that was made after the midweek heading into the James Madison game was obviously what needed to happen, because you rip off a 6-1 record. You have an undefeated November. You build all of this momentum coming into this season. It was just the right move for the team, but that is a no knock on what Henry Colombi was able to do, providing us with that massive, historic, epic win. So I am forever indebted to him. I wish him nothing but the best of luck in life after football. Right. And if he happens to listen, or anybody that he's associated with happens to listen, I want them to know that there's no ill will here. They're like, we're not going to get on here and drag anybody because it didn't work out. In fact, it's just the opposite. I'm super thankful for what he was able to do for the Herd. Right. So I want to make that known. But otherwise, movement wise, you bring in a couple of intriguing prospects, some young guys, and a grad transfer guy that has played. And it sucked seeing Cade go. We liked Cade. We thought he was a cool cat to have in the QB room. His family was really kind of all in on Marshall, and now they get to be all in Memphis, right? So best of luck to him as well. And Pete was the only other quarterback on the roster last year that threw a pass, right? It was a one pass attempt, but he was the only other one on the roster that threw a pass last year. So he's moved on as well. And I think overall we're a better group than we were last year. And of course, the bulk of that is the development of the guys that stayed. But you got any other thoughts on the movement?
Just what I was saying on the movement, that it's not a lot, was it wasn't a lot from the production side.
Very true.
It's I know that there were roster moves, and there were people that were clamoring for, as there is every season, a backup to get in.
Sure.
But the backup that left, or a couple that left, it wasn't anything that we lost as far as any kind of production whatsoever. It was all speculative. Well, let's see what this person could do.
Yeah. So let's move in and talk projected starter, because I think we can. I feel comfortable removing the word projected. The only way I would say it is if barring injury.
Sure.
This is Cam Fancher's team, right? Mm-hmm. It is his team. The kid goes 6-1 as a starter last year, and that stat alone is enough to make you go, end of discussion. He's our week one guy. All right. And Huff is going to say some things to keep the competition level high against these guys. He's not going to name a starter. He's going to keep these guys pushing one another, because that's what you want. But it's redshirt sophomore Cam Fancher, 6'1", 201, 131 out of 235 last year, 1,558 yards, 10 touchdowns versus 6 interceptions, 107 carries last year for 466 yards to the good, making him the second leading rusher on the team, 1 touchdown on the ground through 13 games, 7 starts. Let's stop right there. Second year in the system, working with Clint Trickett, a whole half of the season of game experience. We saw Cam Fancher be a completely different quarterback at James Madison than he was at the end of the season. Completely different, right? In a good way. And Huff has mentioned he was dinged up in the bowl game. He had back spasms. He couldn't do the things he wanted to do, so they had to limit what they were able to allow him to do. And you saw a more run-heavy, Ali, Laburn, backfield, carrying the load, all that kind of stuff. So talk about freaking Cam Fancher and why he, to you, is the guy.
Versatility and what he can do running the ball. Experience right now, I can't imagine, not against Albany, it wouldn't really matter, I don't think, but I can't imagine coming up with Virginia Tech and ECU and North Carolina State and that slate that we have, throwing someone in there as a first-time starter into that role. I think it was kind of the same thing that we saw last year with Colombi being the starter at the beginning of the season. It was because number 2 is you want somebody to have experience for number 2, Notre Dame.
Yeah.
So I think all that, and again, I think that he was a freshman last year playing for the first time. I didn't expect him to throw up 300 a game, nor did we need him to, with the defense that we had and having Laburn with the running attack that we had. So I think that he's had time to mature, He's had time to get his reps in with the ones, full off season of being the starter. Um, I just think that everything that Huff said at media days, growing as a leader, all of that just says he's your number one guy.
Well, I agree, right? And let's talk about particularly you said, well, I didn't expect him to throw up 300 yards a game. Well, let's go to the head-to-head matchup with Sun Belt Conference MVP, Offensive Player of the Year, whatever exactly. What
Grayson
Grayson
McCall.
McCall, right? And yeah, Marshall loses that game, but I don't think that falls on the offense. And let's talk about that game just as a microcosm of what Cam is able to do. The run game wasn't there for the Herd, right? Laburn goes for 59 yards in that game. He does find the end zone once. Ethan Payne's the second leading rusher with 28 yards. Cam rushing in that game has -3, but through the air, 320 yards. So you can't just tell me he can't put up big passing yardage numbers. He can't. Now, was the completion percentage great? No, 19 out of 36. But you're behind early. You have to pass. The defense knows you have to pass. And he's still able to rack up over 300 yards. So can he do it through the air? Yep, shown that he can. Can he do it on the ground? Yep, second leading rusher. He's shown that he can. So why aren't we giving this kid the grace to go out and show what he can do with another year of development? Like through the fire of the last half of the season, complete off season, spring season, and now we're into summer camp. Why is the narrative by a lot of the fan base, well, I just don't trust him. Well, I just don't like him. Why is that?
I think two reasons, and I don't think either of them is fair. One is that we are still trying to live in that era of QBU, even as far back as the 80s with Peterson, and then you've got Michael Payton, and then you've got Chad, and then Todd Donnan even in there.
Yeah.
Even though Chris Parker was the offense, Donnan still chucked the ball a lot. We had just this not air raid, but we had this really prominent string of quarterbacks: Chad, Byron, and a few years later, Cato, obliterating records. And I think people want to see that. That's the way the NFL game has gone. That's the way a lot of college football has gone, that you're putting that up. And I think people saw the stats and were thinking, well, that's not enough.
Mm-hmm.
But again, he was a freshman. He wasn't a true freshman, but because, like Coach Huff said, he missed a lot of the stuff during COVID. He was in all. He was a freshman basically last year, and he put up those numbers, and he was 6-1 as a starter.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't as sexy for people. And number two, us still living in the past. We all want to see all-timer, maybe greatest ambassador for the Herd that we'll ever have, Chad Pennington. We want to see what we look at the photos and him standing beside each other as the clone, his son. And I think that's unfair too. He's not thrown a pass and not started a game.
Yeah, there are some unfair comparisons, and folks, for what they can feel however they want to feel. I'm just saying, why is there absolutely, seemingly, for a large portion of the fan base, absolutely no grace to just allow Cam to come out and impress you this year? Why is there not the opportunity? How has he not earned the opportunity to come out and say, hey, look, before you bench me, why don't you let me show you what I can do now? Right. So what are these same folks going to be singing those praises if Marshall's 4-0 in the out of conference, or 3-1, and they beat East Carolina, they beat Virginia Tech, and they, let's say, win or lose a close one in Raleigh, and it's absolutely not the quarterback's fault that game doesn't go Marshall's way? Are those same folks still going to be like, well, see, I just don't trust him? I mean, I don't know what the guy can do. I really don't. And yeah, some folks will be like, man, KD's just full of it. He's just full of it. And I might be full of it, but that's okay. I'm willing to give our players the opportunity to prove me right before I just say, get him out of here. No,
well,
let's
not have any revisionist history that we've seen around here. There was smoke about Cato as a freshman.
Sure.
Of, this guy is not the guy. He's a hothead on the sidelines yelling at the coach. He got benched. He's erratic and this and that. Look at the leap that he took. Okay. Yeah. That was a freshman. And he took an amazing leap. Byron, I was one of the people in the stands saying, "What's this guy doing? He's holding the ball too well.
Throw the ball.
Throw the ball. You're taking too many sacks." And look at Chad. How often we've talked about that. He was thrown to the fire. I think he was fourth string.
Yeah.
Definitely going to get a red shirt that year. They had no intentions of playing him at all, and yeah, we went to the national title game, but it wasn't because Chad Pennington was a seasoned, well-oiled machine ready to lead us to a title game. We had a heck of a team surrounding him,
Yeah.
and he benefited greatly by a red shirt year the next year, and then he came in and was ready. Uh, I just there needs to not be green tinted glasses. There needs to not be any revisionist history. This is a pattern that we have had. Quarterbacks that went on to be great were not all that great when they first came out compared to what they would come into.
Of course, because they developed and they had the opportunity to make mistakes and they didn't get pulled out of the game and it's like, all right, you're done. You threw a pick.
Check this out. I'm looking at the roster from 2022 and the roster from now and comparing sizes and everything. Cole Pennington last year was listed at 6'2", 207. This year he's listed as 6'3", 212. Fancher was 6'1", 194 or 195. Now he's 201. That's progression in the weight room, just growing. Think back when you were 18 and going from 18 to 19 and 19 to 20. You weren't in the weight room and you put on weight.
Yeah.
That's just part of getting older.
Just growing up.
Yeah, you're growing, you're developing. So I think we're going to see a bigger, stronger Cam Fancher, who is already a great athlete. He was in the triple jump in high school. He's got a second gear that he hits. But just all those reps with the ones, the off season with the ones, the leadership, the game slows down a little bit more. Your reads come a little bit more natural, and it's going to be for everybody. And I think that we're going to be pleasantly surprised with what we see out of Cam Fancher.
But not to mention, there's also the added ability of the dual threat run game because we haven't seen any of these other quarterbacks on this roster in a herd uniform, right? But we know that Cole is more of a drop back passer. We know that. We know that McMahon is probably more of a drop back passer, right?
He had some rushing.
He did. But I'm saying that's not – I wouldn't consider him necessarily a true dual threat quarterback. I consider Cam a true dual threat.
Sure.
I would feel that McMahon has the ability to evade and make something out of nothing, like get a positive from a negative situation. But I don't think I would game plan and think, okay, we have to respect his ability to go for 150 yards on us. You know what I mean? No knock on him. It's just not what I would feel he is. And Parachek, Shearholz, Harrison, probably a little bit more of a dual threat guy, but Parachek and Shearholz, probably more of those drop back pass type guys. Also mobile to a degree. I mean, hell, Tom Brady's mobile to a degree, but
not a big one.
At some point, you're not anymore. But that's the other wild card part. It's the ability to tuck the ball and take off. I mean, you're the second leading rusher on the team last year. And when you start to think about Rasheen Ali back and AJ Turner going to make some strides, Ethan Payne doing this thing, all this flexibility, being able to go multiple with the tight ends and this wide receiver room, I can't sell it anymore. And I don't even feel like we should be trying to sell it. Let's give Cam an opportunity to succeed. Let's give him an opportunity to have that sophomore leap developmentally that Cato had. Is Cam going to come out and throw 50 touchdowns? Probably not. But if he comes out and throws for 2,500 yards this season and doubles up that touchdown total, interception total stays roughly the same, and you're looking at a 20-7 or 20-8 touchdown interception ratio, 2,500 yards passing, nipping close to maybe 800 yards rushing, you going to be mad at that? Are you going to be mad at that?
No, and I don't think he needs to come anywhere close to that for me to not be mad, because all I care about is that game over in the win column or is it in the loss column?
Correct.
That's all I care about. And I think that we have senior all-world running back Rasheen Ali right there. We've got a defense that's probably going to be very similar to how it was last year, or on paper it looks like it is. I don't see where we need to put up those crazy stats or even the moderate stats as long as we mitigate our turnovers, don't have the errors, and he just leads the team. That's
Yeah.
all I need from him.
Yeah, I agree. We are not. I highly doubt we're going to see this pass heavy offense, right? Huff is. I want to run the football and I want to stop the run, right? And as long as they're able to do that, they're probably not going to deviate from that. If you're
You
getting
don't need
5 yards
to.
a carry, why would you deviate from that?
Yeah.
If you're scoring touchdowns and not settling for field goals, and you can control the offense and the clock's on your side and all that kind of stuff. Oh, by the way, you have a great defense that can bail you out more times than not if it doesn't go right. Why are we rocking the boat right now? Why are we putting ripples in the pool? Let's see what happens before we try to make wholesale changes. We didn't make wholesale changes at the quarterback position until we were 3-3 and midway through the season last year. And some folks, I'm not saying you're wrong. You can feel how you want to feel, but some folks want to do it before week 1. And I just can't understand that. Let's talk about some of the other quarterbacks, actually the remainder of the quarterbacks on this roster. And let me preface this by saying no other quarterback on this roster has thrown a pass in a game in a Herd uniform. So take that into account when you're ready to bench your starting quarterback. I guess we got to start with grad transfer TJ McMahon comes over from Rice, 5'11", 195 pounds. He was Rice's leading passer last year, 160 out of 266, 2,102 yards, 18 touchdowns, 14 interceptions in just 10 games. So he missed 3 games. They only threw for like 3,500 yards as a team, and he tallied 2,100 of those yards. Adding him feels like a insurance policy from the surface, right? Cam goes down. We've got a guy that's played. We've got a guy that's won games at Rice. Hello. That's not an easy task in and of itself. You have to think that the roster that's assembled here at Marshall is far superior to the roster overall that's assembled at Rice. No knock on them, but it is what it is. So before we go farther, let's talk about McMahon.
Insurance policy was the exact verbiage I was going to use to describe him. The other thing that I would describe him would be seasoned, because he does have experience for that. So if something happens, injury, or you just have to take a series off, whatever it is, you've got someone with experience that can go in there that's played in front of some big crowds, not at Rice, but other places. I mean, let's face it, it's not at Rice for a big crowd, but he has experience in playing in front of stadiums and such as a starter. The other thing is he is drastically undersized. If people are saying, well, Cam just doesn't seem that big to me at 6'1", 201, TJ McMahon is a lot smaller than him.
Mm-hmm. 2 inches shorter, another 6 pounds lighter.
Yeah, and it's not a knock. I don't think that means that he can't do the job, but I'm just saying people are saying some of the stuff. Hey, Cam's a little too small for what I think we need to have a taller quarterback, or so McMahon is not going to come in here and uproot him as the starter, in my opinion. He's here for in case anything goes down, and he can play the role Cam did last year.
Yeah, not to mention that's a very veteran presence that's on your sideline when he's not in the game.
That's right.
And he's seeing things that only experienced, seasoned, multi-year quarterbacks can see, right? Because they've been in the games, they see certain things. So you have an opportunity to maybe coach him up, these younger quarterbacks, in practice sessions, and help them game plan and prepare. I think it's not going to be a very well-received thing for folks that are listening to this. I think he's probably quarterback 2 going into week 1. Most fans are going to want to hear, no, Pennington is quarterback 2. You guys are all
nipping
wrong
at the heels.
But it doesn't feel like that to me. It feels like if Cam goes out in the first series and he has to come out for a series because he got rolled up on or something, he'll be ultimately okay, but he's got to come out. You're going to see McMahon trot out there. You're not going to see Pennington trot out there. Maybe later in the year that changes, but I think at the beginning of the season, I think TJ Mann probably goes into week 1 as your quarterback 2. Let's talk about everybody else. So we might as well talk about him now. Cole Pennington, right? Everybody wants to see Cole in the game. We're no different. I'm sure
Mm-hmm.
we have this rap, I think, probably, that folks are like, they just don't want to see him play. No,
No, I
nothing,
want to see.
nothing could be farther from the
Yeah,
truth.
I
We
want to
want
see
to
him
see
be
you.
so far ahead of everybody else that there is no chance because we were here when Chad was playing.
Yeah.
And I've got to say, on a personal level, I've talked to that young man twice, and I have not seen a more respectful, built for this kind of, dealing with.
Yeah.
And I don't mean in a media situation. I didn't talk to him, interviewing him or anything. Just speaking to him on campus at two different places that we just happened to run into each other, and he could not have been a more prepared, respectful uh, person. I think that he's got all the makeup of it. I root for this guy.
Yeah.
He's
Actively.
he is not the number one right now.
Yeah, I actively root for him to develop to a level to where it becomes insurmountable to just, we can't pay attention to Cole anymore. No,
Yeah,
I want him to be there so that you go, hey, we can't not play him anymore. He's
that's
that
right.
good, right?
That's right.
That's what I want too, because when you think about the Chad Pennington era at Marshall, it was magical, right? And there is a certain like draw that is inside all Herd fans' chests. It's like we can replicate that with Cole because it just feels like you can. They look very similar when they were those ages. When Chad was that college age, Cole looks a lot like him. The curly hair and the big tall build, and super nice guy. You're right. The built for this mentality that comes through. And that
Mm-hmm.
was last year. As a freshman. Now you're looking at a redshirt freshman. He was built for this, like from a mental standpoint, last year. And can you even fathom for a second, saying, I'm going to go play at Marshall? What? Like, the comparisons will never stop. They've
Right.
probably always been there through middle school, through Pee Wee League, through high
Mm-hmm.
school. But you chose to go to Marshall, and those expectations, those comparisons are just going to automatically ramp up because you're in a Kelly Green jersey with Pennington across the back.
Mm-hmm.
And when we ran into him just randomly, and we talked to him for a minute. We're not trying to impede his day. I told him specifically, I said, hey, I want you to know that there are fans out there that are rooting for Cole Pennington because you're Cole Pennington, not because you're Chad Pennington's son, right? And I that's the way I feel. I want him to do well because he plays quarterback here at Marshall, not because he's who his dad is, right? And I think it's important that some fans see that. Like, he's his own guy. I don't want him to be the next Chad Pennington. I want him to be the first Cole Pennington, right? If he can obliterate all of Chad's records by the time he leaves, I would love that for him because that
Mm-hmm.
means he was able to do it his own way, right?
Mm-hmm.
I want to see him play. Like, I would love to see him play today.
I
But
just don't want to see him, same as you. I don't want to see him thrown out there when he's not ready or that he's not the best option that we have to win.
that's right. It's all about who's the best option to win games, right? And
Yep.
when it's Cole, it's Cole. That's
right.
just what it is.
Yep.
Also on the roster, Chase Harrison comes in the same recruiting class as Cole Pennington, the 6'2", 192-pounder. The development for Chase has been positive. What little bit comes out there, he's it's not like, well, he's taking a step back or anything like. So these guys are progressing nicely. It's just this is a big depth chart. I mean, it's 6 guys, and you got to go 1 through 6 somewhere. So these guys are vying for any little sliver of opportunity they can get. What the best I think we can hope for is that we come out like we did last year and beat the snot out of our opening opponent, and we can get these young guys into a game situation. Remember last year we played every quarterback on the roster, everyone in Norfolk State. Only one made a pass attempt, which is Pete Zamora, but Cole got in the game, right?
Yeah.
Chase got in the game. All these guys, Cade even got in the game. Last couple of guys you mentioned, Colin Parachek comes over from Morehead State, the really interesting prospect out of the state of Michigan. It's a guy to keep your eye on developmentally, and also developmentally, true freshman Jack Shearholz comes over from Colorado. Colin Parachek and Shearholz are almost mirror images of one another, both 6'3", Parachek 210, Shearholz 211. So Russ, big room, right? You can only play one at a time. Your depth chart's probably usually not going to go beyond 3. Listed. You're going to have QB1, QB2, and an emergency quarterback. Everybody else is going to be on that scout team type thing, and that's where you're going to get your development. So rounding out the room is really youthful, really youthful.
Yes.
What would you say is like your overall feeling about this room as it relates to class status, hierarchy, depth, all that?
Well, I think that it's a favorable situation for Cam having so many years left to play that these other guys are younger than him on the roster. Uh, you know, it would be a different situation if Cam was a last year player exhausting his eligibility this year. Then you're looking at, man, now we've got to try to develop somebody this year while giving Cam his flowers, and letting him play out his final year. You don't have to do that. If somebody passes Cam midway through the year, like Cam passed Columbia last year, then it's just the way it is, and you've got a youthful roster, and then you've got years ahead of you. I think it's a great problem to have. Shearholtz, I think, no chance that, barring catastrophic injuries to multiple people, does he get out of this year without taking a red shirt. I think that he's got one to give as a true freshman, and he'll do that. And then the other guys, they're just going to be battling for that third spot to try to move up to second, to try to move up to first.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The thing that worries me is there's this bottleneck right there at freshman, redshirt freshman, and it's hard to foresee a future 2 years from now where all of these same guys are here.
There was an equal bottleneck last year, and two of them left, and that's the nature of the beast now. And I think that that's why you have to have multiples in those classes, because if you put all your eggs in that one basket in that class, and that person is no longer here, and they transfer to go elsewhere due to playing time, due to whatever, all of a sudden now you've got a hole on your roster. So I'm actually happy with that.
Well, you do, but you don't, right? Because the portal exists to plug that hole, right?
Right.
If you get into that situation and you're like, man, we need somebody, and you can go all in. There are productive quarterbacks that can come in and play for you and produce for you and win games for you every year in the portal cycle. Every year, we went and got two actually this year. So it is a concern, but it's not an overall like, oh man, we just went from a 10-win team to a 2-win team because
Right.
we don't know what we have. I don't feel like that's the scenario that we live in this world anymore, because so many people hit the portal for whatever reason. So the guys like Clint Trickett, guys like Huff, go out and find those guys and they can bring them here, right? But I still feel overall very comfortable about who we have on the roster and how they are developing. Now, honestly, you can call me a homer if you want to. I am just really pumped to see this fresh start, full week one starter season for Cam Fancher, based on everything we've heard in the offseason from media days and how he has settled into a bigger role, a bigger leadership role. Dude, I think the sky's the limit for this kid right now, and I'm just really kind of here for it.
Well, think back what Coach Huff said to us, that they could not call. Let's say they have planes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He said maybe you get to step 3 or something, and you're like, okay, with that person, we're at step 3 now, but you're still not at step 5, step 7. You don't want to throw all that to him at once. Now he's had an off season to be able to do that. The offensive playbook had to be scrapped largely right before the season last year.
Huff's words.
Yeah, what they had to plan. I think that you can see Trickett open things up more to what he actually wanted to do last year that he couldn't, because everything had to be changed. And I think it's really going to pan out, and we're going to see something totally different. And you know what? If it doesn't happen, you've got the backups in there that you can then say, all right, let's change it up. We did it last year. We can do it this year.
Yeah, that's right, man. That's the name of the game. You you play to win the game. Let's talk about strengths and weaknesses, Russ. What's your number one overall strength for this quarterback room?
Having someone come in that was 6-1 over the last little bit at the end of the season, and also that person having the sacks going down, they improved as the year went on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my number one overall goal is the same thing. It's Cam Fancher is your biggest strength because he's 6-1 as a starter. He appeared in every game last season and has another year with Clint Trickett. The language, the terminology, the communication, the expectation, there's no question marks here. they're all on the same page, and he's had an opportunity now to expand that knowledge and get to level 4, level 5 in this offense. And frankly, that's far and away the biggest strength. It's like 1, and then way down the line is 2 and 3. You've got an experienced starter that won games for you, won a bowl game, and again, how many times do I have to say it? We're a bad quarter away from us being in the conference championship game. Cam Fancher's the number 1 biggest strength of this room, bar none. What's number 2 for you?
Number 2, his versatility with the running game. You said earlier, he is a true dual threat. He's got a second gear that I like to say that he can hit, and you can see it, on a quarterback sneak, and he's right up the gut. If the hole's big enough, there's a good chance he takes it to the house. Mm-hmm. I think you'll see a lot more touchdowns out of him where he's breaking a long run this year than you did last year. He only got 1 touchdown last year.
Yep, and I agree. That's my number 2 also. It's the true dual threat ability. He's the second team leading rusher last year. Will that happen again this year? Quite possibly, right? We fully expect a healthy Rasheen Ali to do ridiculous amounts of damage. But the level of respect that guy is going to garner from a defensive standpoint is going to leave some opportunities for Cam Fancher to find holes and make plays, right? Mm-hmm. So I fully expect that dual threat running ability to rear its head in the repertoire of Cam Fancher weapons to be exploited on unsuspecting defenses who are so worried about Rasheen Ali. Do you have a third?
I do. And I think that the lack of need for him to go out and do that 3 touchdowns a game, 300 yards a game, throw for 3,000 on the season, that is the key for me. That is a huge strength that he does not have to do that. So he doesn't have that pressure to go out there and say, I'm our only offense. He's not even the main offense when you've got a guy like Rasheen Ali back there. So I think that is a huge strength that he does not have to do that.
Yeah, that's not one I even considered, but that is a great point. The not having to go out and put up video game numbers just for Marshall to hope to win. That doesn't exist in 2023 for this roster. Right. My number 3 overall strength was adding that grad transfer quarterback to help mitigate the overall lack of in-game experience. Your insurance policy, and I know that might be heard as like a little bit of a negative term, but it's not, because you're going to be relied on heavily. If they need you, they need you, right? So having the ability to trot a guy into the game at a moment's notice, who's been there, who's done that, who's won games, who's played Division I ball, who's been in multiple off seasons. There is no question marks about acclimation to the college game. There is no questions about can he adjust to the speed of the game. No, it's not there. You're right. I don't know Rice's out of conference schedule intimately over the last 3 years, but undoubtedly they've played in some big games, most likely in the state of Texas. And you're just kind of there. You're just kind of in there. You're not going to be shaken. It was a lot of what we hoped we would see for Henry last year, and we did. He went into South Bend, did not get shaken, and won a game. So if the need arises, TJ McMahon can trot right in there. And you would hope that you can hand the ball off to Rasheen a couple of times, make a short read to, Toby Payne, maybe Ethan out of the backfield, hit Chuck Montgomery across the middle, or hit Talik down the sideline, whatever, and just move this offense, just let it chug along until Cam's ready to come back in or until he finds the end zone. Let's talk weaknesses. What's your number 1 overall weakness here?
After Cam, it's all unknown.
I'm with
you. And I mean, we've got depth, but we don't have a single pass that's been in a Herd uniform. Even with the insurance policy, he's not been here in this system, thrown a pass as a player. Parachek was the starter over at Morehead State. He's not thrown a pass over here. Harrison and Pennington have been here in the system, knowing it now for either a year or a year and a half.
Right.
And they have not thrown a pass in a game.
Yeah. It's Cam Fancher and everybody else.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. You take it how you want it. You can choose to turn your eye to the fact that it's Cam Fancher and everyone else from the standpoint of in-game playing experience and throwing passes, having production. Cole appeared in a game last year. Chase appeared in a game last year. Neither threw a pass, right? McMahon's thrown plenty of passes. They just happen to be in Texas, but not in Huntington. And then you have Parachek, a transfer that has been productive at Moorhead, but that conference is not the Sun Belt East. You know,
That's
we
right.
know how tough this division particularly is. Conference as a whole. Marshall doesn't get any favors. They got South Alabama in the non-con or in the crossover also, a favorite to win the conference by a lot of people. So even when you get out of that Sun Belt East matchups, you've still got to play South Alabama. You've got Arkansas State, which you probably feel pretty good about. But outside of Arkansas State and the opener, it's a lot of tough games in there. A lot of tough games out of conference and even in conference, right? James Madison's going to be good. Old Dominion is probably going to be improved. So nothing's easy. Georgia State's probably going to even be improved. You know, Granger's a year older. He's a senior now. He's the guy now. But you've still got to have folks that have been in that fire. And Cam's the only one that's done it here. So it's Cam and everybody else. Do you have a second?
I do. I've got a second and a third.
Okay.
The second one, I'm not really like that crazy on, of it being a huge negative or a huge weakness, but we don't have those gaudy stats. You know, those. It's still unknown until he comes out and does it. That, you know, it wasn't eye popping numbers. Now, I just said we don't need to have them, but it would be a lot more toward the. I mean, it'd be a verified strength to where right now it's a weakness that we don't really know.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, you know, hey, he threw for 125 yards a game and this and that. It's a bit on the weakness side for me.
Yeah. I can dig that, you know, and that's been a running theme with all of our breakdowns is the absolute, well, we don't know.
It's unknown.
Past this guy, and that guy, we don't know. And
Yeah.
I think you're always going to have that, but doesn't it just get magnified quite a bit when you start talking about the quarterback position?
It does.
Over all other positions, the quarterback position causes everything to get
And
magnified.
again, just to clarify, I am on board with saying, you can quote me on that. We don't need to have it. We don't need to have
Sure.
more than the 125. It's just, if I have to come up with some weaknesses, that would be one of them that I would say, hey, it's unknown if he can do the 250. You know, I know that we did that against Grayson McCall. I know he has the potential to do it. Can he do it week in, week out and put those numbers up? Even though ultimately I don't think that we need it.
Yeah, and to that point, not only do you not really need it, but you've seen Cam lead this team to victory in several different ways.
Yeah.
Passing the ball where he goes for over 300, we end up losing that game. But let's think again about Old Dominion, to where they couldn't stop us running. So what did we do? We just ran all day, and we won that game. What was like 12-0 or 20 to so
12-0.
Who cares? An ugly win is a win. If you want to call that ugly, fine. Is it ugly because the scoreboard didn't say 28-0? Is that why it's ugly? Because ultimately it still goes in the left-hand column. That's all that matters. You know, you go into a very hostile environment in Harrisonburg as your first ever start against the James Madison team that's really good. And, you know, Cam doesn't have a super great day. Owen Porter has a phenomenal day. Kalen Laburn has a great day. But he still does enough to win that game, right? So and you go into the bowl game. He's not himself. He's not 100%. He can't do what he wants to do. And you know what? Well, we just lean on Laburn, and we lean on Ali, and we lean on that defense who picks up a defensive score for us. And you kind of, you know, go up early, and then I don't want to call it cruise, but that game was really not in question. It wasn't in question, you know? So Cam can win games for you. He doesn't have to put up these numbers, and we've seen it already. In 7 starts, we've seen him win games 2, 3, 4 different ways. So here's my other weakness that I don't know if I can really call it a weakness, because it's just out there. We fully think that Cam Fancher's QB1, right? But Charles Huff won't come out and say Cam Fancher's our QB1. So is that a weakness? Maybe you can call it that, because fans are going to go, well, then who's the guy? If Cam's not, then who's the guy?
I think that even though he didn't, he did by putting him down there at Media Day.
For sure.
And we've discussed that, but I'm on board with what you're saying. He has not come out and said specifically, he is our game 1 starter, he's our game 12 starter. He has not come out and said that in the media. It's just, I think he said it without saying it, and sometimes that's okay.
But he's also went against that because he keeps saying things like, now, if we had to play a game tomorrow, Cam's going to be our game 1 starter, but we're not playing tomorrow. So
Right.
over the course of the next 30 days, this was a couple
Sure.
weeks ago when camp
Yeah.
started, he said, oh, over the course of the next 30 days, if someone supplants Cam, that will be our week 1 starter. So he's
Yeah.
being very true to his mantra of the best player will play.
Sure.
So do I think that's a little bit to drive competition in that room? Absolutely. Is it a little bit of gamesmanship by Coach Huff to maybe keep other coaches going, well, is Fancher the guy? I mean, who do we need to game plan for? Absolutely it is, because you don't give anything away. He talked about that. He talked about not talking about things on shows like the ThunderCast because everybody can listen, and they're not going to give away their secrets for people to make it easier for them. It's all about keeping the edge from a competition standpoint. So I don't find that to be a weakness. I think it's more of a tactical approach leading into the season than anything else. Most certainly not a weakness. Who are you most excited to see this
I've got
season?
one.
Oh,
I've got my one.
oh yeah, you got
weakness.
another one. What's your other
Yeah,
one?
my other one is the inverse of what I said last year. Cam is a lefty. If he goes down, or if he gets surpassed, all of a sudden, it's different. Now, I'm not an offensive lineman, but I've heard analysts talk about this plenty of times before. If most of the time you're rolling out to a certain side because it benefits that person, it also flips the blind side. Yeah, I just feel like that could be a weakness anytime you're switching from a lefty to a righty. It might not be a huge problem, but there might be a minor problem for transitioning, just until you say, okay, now we're with this. Now we're with
Yeah,
that.
it's the little things too. It's the spiral of the balls rotating the different way. It's how you're used to catching, the feel of the ball. These things matter. Every little minute detail matters, and that's always for the life of me. You would think, being a left-handed guy myself, I would remember that Cam Fancher is a lefty, but that always evades me. So now, who are you most excited to see in 2023?
Cam Fancher.
Wow, go figure.
Yeah.
Me too. Right, I'm willing to give the kid all the chances that he needs to prove that he is quarterback 1 until it is just abundantly clear that he either is the guy or he isn't the guy. I'm willing to do that, and I think everybody else should at least be willing to give him an opportunity to prove that he is. Right. Who's the biggest loss from a year ago?
Columbia, he started 6 games
Mm-hmm.
and won the game, like you said, against Notre Dame. Um, as much as it did not pan out after the midseason for him, that's still a big loss.
Yeah, it certainly is. He was just under 1,000 yards passing last year. If a few plays go differently, maybe Cam isn't the starter midseason. Think about Labron not fumbling twice inside the 5 at Bowling Green, and if Marshall wins that game. Think about if Troy doesn't get the early scoop and score on the sack fumble on Columbia. If that game goes differently, now all of a sudden you're not a 3-3 ball club. You're potentially like a 5-1 ball club. If Louisiana still beats Marshall in the midweek, who knows, right? So the reason that the change was made isn't 100% his fault. Things went wrong, right? So he's still the biggest loss. He's still going to be able to say, you know what, I put the second largest win in program history. That's on my resume at Marshall. All these storied quarterbacks, all of these great players that they've had, when they talk about great wins, they're going to talk about Henry Columbia, and they're going to talk about Columbia to Devin Miller. That's what they're going to talk about. And he's not wrong for thinking that. I mean, if he thinks that, he's not wrong. Who's your breakout player?
Cam Fancher. We're expecting him to play the majority of the snaps as it is right now. So it's going to be hard for somebody else to be a breakout if they get in every now and then. I think that he is going to take a step up to another level from where he was last year. I think he's going to put up some really good stats on the ground as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that leading this team, he's going to have a breakout, and hopefully he's going to silence a lot of people that are saying he's not the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. He's my breakout player too. I think he's just poised to take that next leap, take that second starting season leap. Right. And if he doesn't, then My caveat to that is whoever wins out the QB2 race is going to have to at that point be your breakout player. If the plan of QB1 doesn't work out, which I fully expect that it will, QB2 that plan has to work out. Otherwise, I don't know how many wins are going to come. If your top two guys don't work out, who's your MVP when it's all said and done?
Cam Fancher. You can't play the majority of the season and not be the MVP of the room. So that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I'm with you, man, and it has to be him. I feel like it has to be. No undue pressure here. Your quarterback won. Everybody is expecting you to perform well. You've got all the tools around you and weapons around you, a really good offensive line to block for you, a great running back running the ball, several massively impactful pieces for the passing game. You have to be the MVP. All the things are there for you to succeed. Now it's up to you to execute. So I think he absolutely is the MVP. But again, he has to be for Marshall to achieve the goals that this team wants to achieve. Russ, great way to close out the breakdown series. This has been an uber fun series to do. I always love doing these every single year. We get to talk about so much stuff and go down so many rabbit holes as it relates to Marshall football and the upcoming season. Next week, we are going to have our season prediction episode. So, that'll be the featured segment. We're going to go game by game down the schedule and talk about each one. And we're going to line it out last year. Both of us were pretty right last year in what we thought might happen. We have not talked about this, folks. We have not talked about where we are with each one of us and our predictions, and we will not do so. It's always fun to just hear the thought process live and for the first time. If you got anything else on quarterbacks or the breakdown series as a whole, let me have it.
No, let's talk to Luke Creasy and see what he has to say and what he can answer of questions that we have on his thoughts.
Heck yeah. So on the other side of this break, hang with us. Marshall beat writer from the Herald-Dispatch, Luke Creasy, is going to join the ThunderCast, and we're going to pick his brain a little bit. It's the ThunderCast. Hang with us. Joining us today is Herd beat writer from the Herald-Dispatch, the new look, Luke Creasy here. Surprised us both when he joined the stream, but man, looking good, bro.
Yeah, I mean, like new football season, got to have a new look going into it, or maybe I accidentally left the guard off the razor. We'll let you guess which one.
Either or, a fresh look for 2023. This is the secret sauce for that 10-win season that we're hoping to see here. So who knows? Beard comes off. This is like the reverse Samson deal. Like the hair comes off and you get stronger. Let's do it.
It might be. Hopefully it improves my writing.
Well, okay. I mean, you're already a pretty cool dude anyway. I don't know if that's going to elevate the vibe of the Luke Creasy, like the whole aura, because I got to be honest, man, you're a pretty solid fella. And I don't know how you can ramp up any higher. You're a pretty kick-ass dude. I mean,
I appreciate it.
Yeah, man. It's always cool to touch base with you, especially, we met for the first time and got to spend a little time together last spring, you and I and Russ at the whole spring game festivities, and that was really awesome. So let's talk about some football. That's what people want to know about. That's what we're gearing up for. So you obviously, since you're the beat writer, you follow the team pretty closely. That's kind of what you're expected to do. So you've got a pretty good idea of what's going on. So let's talk about some of the most competitive position groups that are leading into this, through summer camp and leading into week one. Where is that big bulk of competition, the vying for playing time, sticking out to you?
I think two positions in particular stick out, given some of the offseason moves and, just some of what we saw in the spring and additions since then. I think one position group you look at is the tight ends. There are 9 tight ends on this roster that was released last week. And you look at some of those and look at really the history of Marshall's usage of tight ends, and you start to question, do you need that many? Mm-hmm. But something Huff said back in the spring, and I think people kind of maybe saw it play out in that spring game. And He just really likes the competition there because there's some versatility. There's
Mhm.
pass catchers, there's blockers. There's really a wide range of talent there at that tight end group that he likes and that he's spoken well of. And I think he said it, to the media last Saturday. It's going to kind of allow them to go multiple in some ways, some 12, 13 personnel maybe. 12 definitely. I would assume we'll see a bunch of that based off of what he said. But, I would expect Toby Payne to take a big step forward. I think he kind of was that guy behind Devin Miller, had a season to learn behind Devin Miller, and got to see, we got to see Toby Payne flash early. He caught a touchdown in that season opener. So I would expect him with another full year in the system to take a big step forward. But behind him, you've got the transfers, Cade Conley, Chris Matillo, who came from Central Michigan and USF respectively. And I would expect those guys to take, some of that 2 and 3 action if there are multiple sets. And then you've got guys like Luke Soto and Sean Salas, who have also joined the crew. So that one in particular is going to be an interesting one to watch, when they roll out for that season opener. Who is the one? Who is the two? Who is a pass catcher out of the group? I look at a guy like Ramad Smith, who transferred in last year from FAU. Can he take a step forward in his second year in the system? So a lot of intriguing competition there. And then, I think when you look at the offensive line, obviously 4 of those starting spots are solidified, but there's one open. It was one that was manned by Cedrice Palant last year there at the left guard spot. And you've got a couple of names who could potentially slide in there. Lloyd Willis is one who came from Florida State, went through the spring with Marshall. And since then, they've added Altrique Barlow, a transfer from TCU, who has got the size, has got the footwork, and obviously has some big game experience there coming from the Horned Frogs. So I think those are 2 position groups that really are intriguing. A lot of depth at wide receiver. I think you'll see a lot of those guys rotated in and out. So I don't think being a 1 or a 2 or a 3 is necessarily big in the wide receiver spot because they're going to rotate a few guys through. I think, but all in all, a lot of competition in different spots, but those are 2 that stand out to me the most.
Yeah, I think Russ has been excited about tight ends for a while. I'm not going to steal his comments here because I know he loves talking about this flexibility, but I am going to steal this one. When's the last time you can remember ever seeing 9 tight ends on a roster? And when's the last time you remember seeing a rodeo champion being one of those tight ends on the roster?
Yeah,
that Greg Kellett was a rodeo champion back when we were here, but he was also a physical freak in nature, if you remember him.
Yeah.
But no, that took several of our questions there that we were going to ask about, the 9 tight ends on the roster. You brought it up already. You brought up the offensive line. A lot of fans last year and going into this year, that's a hot button for them, the offensive line. So what are your thoughts on now that those 4 you mentioned have kind of solidified their spots? They played most of the year together last year. What are your thoughts heading into this year on what we can expect out of the offensive line?
I think consistency is important for that group. You look at what happened last year. Obviously, you lose Eddie Morrissey after the Notre Dame game. And then I think because I wrote about this a couple of weeks ago, I think there were 4 sacks combined in the first 2 weeks against Norfolk State and Notre Dame. And then in those following 2 weeks, there were 9 combined sacks between Troy and Bowling Green. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that, Eddie Morrissey, he was a strict coach. He was hard on him. And maybe that didn't sit right with a few people. But after that, Bill Legg had to kind of jump in real quick and go back to coaching the offensive line and tight ends. But, they've hired a tight end coach. Bill Legg is now the O-line coach and spent, the last part of last year with him. They're comfortable with Cam Fancher at quarterback because you lose a coach, you change quarterback. That's a lot of change for the offensive line, especially when Henry Columbia and Cam Fancher were not in any way the same quarterback. And so I think consistency is going to be really big for that group. I know Logan Osborne has talked about how they felt disrespected going into last year. They were called the weak link of the team, and at times they were. You look at the number of sacks and the pressure they allowed on the quarterback. I think their Marshall opponents had 36 sacks last year. I mean, that's 3 a game, and that's troublesome. But I think those 4 coming back, Driscoll, Logan Osborne, who has shifted to guard, Trent Holler has shifted to center, which are kind of more their natural positions, and then my mind is escaping me.
Well, it's either Driscoll or Tucker. I don't know who you were mentioning.
Tucker.
Yeah, he already mentioned Driscoll.
Yeah, it was Tucker. Sorry, Dalton, if you listen to this. But yeah, I think consistency is big for those 4, and they've been together now all last year, all through the spring, summer, and then you can add one piece in and kind of keep everything consistent. So I think that they're going to take a step forward, and having Rasheen Ali back is going to be big with him fully healthy, because I don't think he was at any point last year, even when he came back.
Yeah, not even just fully healthy, but according to him, in better shape than he's ever been. Felt better than he's ever been, which is got to be scary.
If you watched him run track, he's got that little burst back.
Hey, boom! Everybody just perked up in their seats or in their car when you said that. I can tell you. But look, you talked about just a minute ago that O-line group felt a little disrespected and felt like because people were calling them the weakest link in the team, but there was a rough patch in the middle. But towards the end, at 3 games into Cam's starting tenure, those sacks went away. I mean, like off a cliff, gone. They went from 5 a game to 1 a game to none. And it was like, what a turnaround. So you're right. It's a little bit of switching up coaches and then buying into what they need to do immediately. And it took 2 or 3 games, right? And you're breaking in a new quarterback. So
And Cam's mobility helped, trim down on those sacks too. He loves that little rollout to the weak side, and that got him out of some trouble. But I think overall, once the dust kind of settled between quarterback changes and an O-line coach change, I think they really solidified themselves, and I think you see that coming into this year. I mean, several of them are on the Sunbelt All preseason list, Athlon preseason lists, and I think they're starting to get some attention and. So that's been good.
Yeah, it certainly has been good. Let's talk about this wide receiver group a little bit, just in general terms, right? Because I feel like you feel. It's not so much as, well, I'm wide receiver 1, I'm wide receiver 2. It's like we're so flexible on offense. What the hell are we going to do? Who's going to trot out there versus who we're playing, right? So as a whole, would you feel comfortable saying, despite the losses from the portal, which are well documented, and the production that went out the door with that, overall, is this group notched up in 2023?
That's an easy yes from me. When you look at just who they lost and who they replaced them with, nothing against the ones they lost. I mean, obviously, Corey Gamage has led the team in receiving the last 3 years. And Shadid Ahmed, had his moments. EJ Horton, who, kind of came on at the end of last year, practice squad guy that worked his way in. But they have replaced that speed, that pass catching ability, and the size that Corey Gamage. I look at a guy like Daryl Simmons, who came in from Stephen F. Austin. He's got that size. Jaden Harrison has the experience to be in the slot. Chuck Montgomery is a name that I'm really high on coming into this year, just because of what I saw from him last year and what I've seen in the offseason and practice period since then. So, I really like this receiver group, and it might take some getting used to for Cam because he's got some different threats. I think DeMarcus Harris, people saw in the spring game, can be a downfield threat and create some space. To transfer from Kentucky, who has worked extensively with Javon Bonite even before Marshall. That was kind of a big selling point for him to come to the Herd, was wide receiver coach Javon Bonite, who he was with at Kentucky. So and Clint Trickett said the same thing. It's not about who's the ones and the twos. It's about who gives us the best matchups when they're in there. And I think you're going to see a lot more out of the wide receivers now that Rasheen Ali is going to draw some attention in the backfield. I thought it was interesting that Huff used the word in the press conference, catastrophic, when he was talking about the alterations to the offense after Rasheen Ali's injury in fall camp last year. He hadn't really put it in those terms before. He had kind of downplayed it all year. He used the phrase catastrophically changed their offensive approach. And so now they're kind of back in their comfort zone. And so I think that's going to make a big difference on the offensive side.
And all these wide receivers, and you didn't mention a healthy Talik Keaton. That really, personally for me, I'm really happy about that. Talik has been up and down and faced so many injuries. I think this is the year for him that I tweeted this, that it's all going to come together. And he's going to have, to me, what feels like that very DeAndre Reeves senior season where he just breaks out as a senior and goes out the right way for him personally and from a team success standpoint. I just love Talik. He's just easy to love, right? He's just easy to love. So having him back 100%, I feel great about that, and I'm just so happy for him. I wanted to toss that in before Russ got rolling.
Yeah, rounding out this offense, we've got to talk about QBs. We talked about it a little bit, but I don't want to say controversy, but there has been a relative controversy created only by fans, in my opinion, on who should start, who should be one, who should be two. What are your thoughts on all of that with Cam Fancher versus, well, we should have someone else step in?
Cam went 6-1, and that's just, that's the truth of it. And so I think that this was his job coming into this year. It always was. But I think when you look at some of the moves they made, of course they added TJ McMahon from Rice. And I think that was just for healthy competition and depth. Because those young quarterbacks behind him, you want to continue to develop those, the Chase Harrisons, the Cole Penningtons, the Colin Paracheks. Those guys are still developing. I was talking to Huff down at Sunbelt Media Days, and he said part of his responsibility as a coach is to protect the team in case something happens to the starting quarterback. So in case something happens to Cam, who's behind him? Are they ready to go in the game? Those are big questions that Huff had to answer. So you go and get a guy like TJ McMahon, who has played Division I college football before. Clint Trickett kind of joked that he won 5 games at Rice, and that's statue worthy. That almost made me laugh in the press conference. I had to sort of contain my chuckle there, but it's the truth, because behind Cam Fancher, nobody on that roster had Division I starting quarterback experience, and so I think that experience provides a lot. But Cam is way more confident coming into this year than I think he was last year. And I think last year, you look at the trajectory of, what he was able to accomplish, and, the same plays he was running in goal line situations against Notre Dame and on 3rd and 7 at Bowling Green on the final drive were the same plays that he was running at the end of the year. And so I think you saw that confidence grow, that experience that came with it. And, I think he is going to be good, in this offense with some dual threats that he has himself. Obviously, he has the ability to run. I think his arm's gotten a little better in this offseason. And he went through this offseason as the starting quarterback. And I think one of the phrases we heard Huff talk about last year was there's a starting quarterback on the team and there's the starting quarterback on the team. And Cam has really grown into the starting quarterback. And I think that's been fun to watch.
Yeah, I would agree. And we heard also at Media Days, Owen talk about how Cam is far more vocal now. He's far more of a leader. He's settled into that role. It's like, we felt like, I'm paraphrasing here, but you almost had to pull words out of Cam last year because he was kind of thrust in mid-season, and he was a young guy, redshirt freshman, and here he is. He's on the big stage and going to James Madison for his first career start, and all that went into that. Pulls out the dub. Owen Porter goes insane in that game, but hey, Kalen LeBourne goes insane in that game. But anyway, it set off in motion this winning streak for Cam, and I think all that you just said is 100% accurate. But honestly, after you say he went 6-1, what more do you need to say? What more do you, honestly, I'm speaking not just to you, but I'm talking, it's about wins and losses, right?
Yep.
So as much as you want to see someone you want to see, and we're not advocating that you don't play someone, I'm just saying, like, if you're 6-1, how do you set that guy? How do you set him? You don't set him unless you are forced into a situation to make a change, which, by the way, we saw mid-season last season, and it worked out, right? So
Yeah.
I just don't know what more the kid can do to prove that he is worthy of at least being your week 1 starter.
Yeah. Go ahead, Russ.
I was just going to say, and look at what we've talked about here with an offensive line that's got 4 or 5 starters returning, and they should be a lot more consistent and everything this year. A couple of roster switch spots to get people in their natural positions. The healthy Rasheen Ali, you've got all these massive tight ends that you can put 2 tight end sets in, and maybe even 3 on the goal line and that sort of thing.
Can you do 9 tight ends?
Yeah.
5 wide with tight ends.
Yeah.
We might be the first ever 5 wide tight end set that I've ever seen ever. Let's make it happen.
But you've got Cam Fancher's running ability behind all of that is the wild card, in my opinion. I just think that it's going to be so hard to stop on an RPO, or a read option.
Yeah.
I mean, look at that. I mean, it's going to be very difficult because he's got a gear that he hits that is faster than most quarterbacks.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think his skill set kind of fits right into the bread and butter of where this offense is headed.
Yeah, it looks pretty exciting on paper, and I haven't been in a position to see it live, obviously, but based on what you see last year and all the reports that you hear, post-practice breakdowns from the coaches and stuff, you start to get excited. If you're listening to that, it drives home the fact that, like, maybe we should give Cam a little grace. So, give him a little, let him show you what he can do and how he's developed. Let's switch sides of the ball real quick and talk about this unbelievably dangerous defense that I don't know how you notch up from a year ago, but it's out there that we could potentially be even better in certain aspects of that defensive play. And Huff even said it on the defensive line, and particularly, I think we're better and different. Last year it was more brute force, and this year it's a little bit different. There's more speed, and there's more game break ability is my word that I like to use. Whereabouts on this defense do you feel, outside of Porter, Neal, and Abraham, are the bright spots to you?
Yeah, I think you look at who they brought in from the transfer portal, and obviously the secondary took a hit with the graduation of Isaiah Norman. Andre Sam transferred, so you had some questions back there. JJ Roberts, Gilmore, yep, of course. JJ Roberts has been huge, and I think the kind of homecoming for him. He's a hometown guy, loves to play ball, and has really grown in his role as the leader on this defense. Kind of stepped right in the spring and learned the groundwork, and has now turned into a pretty vocal leader of that crew. But I think the position that I had the biggest question about coming in was linebacker, not because of, I doubt, Eli Neal, but because you look at who they lost behind that. I mean, Kobe Cumberlander was kind of a hybrid guy. Charlie Gray, so many names in that linebacker room gone this year. And so, but Steven Dix Jr., a transfer from Florida State, has taken a step up. Keyshawn Brown from App State is a guy that had a lot of playing experience there for the Mountaineers, and comes in and brings that and kind of fits right in. So I think I think Huff's right. This defense is just as fast, if not faster, than the last year's. And but something that Seymour said in one of these press conferences: you can have good guys, you can have great players on defense, but that doesn't mean you play great defense.
Yeah.
And so I think this kind of gelling period of fall camp, because there's been several newcomers since spring ball, I think this has been huge for them to kind of mesh and gel and learn how each other plays. But the defensive line has been, a selling point for Huff's defense. it was last year, and I think it will be this year. That first year, he was notorious for saying that they went into the New Orleans Bowl with like 5 or 6 healthy D linemen, and he was never going to do that again. And he is a man of his word, because they could lose a couple and still be 7 or 8 deep. I think it was impressive.
Size, man, the size. Wow.
Yep. Tom McBride, the kid that came up from Incarnate Word, Chris Thomas, big names there, and big bodies to complement kind of what they already had coming back.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans were with you there. They felt really great about defensive line, but you can't look at the surface and go, holy crap, man, you lose Charlie Gray, you lose Abe Beauplan, 2 massively high performers.
Yeah.
What's this linebacker? Eli Neal is a great player, but dang, he can't play 3 positions, right? So what are you going to do there? And I think Huff made the right moves. Those guys, Shannon Morrison, of course, is going to get some dogs in there to play, on his defense, play linebacker his way, because he's a stud in his own right. And I can't help but not worry about replacing starting safeties, because what is this, the 3rd consecutive year that Marshall's going to replace both starting safeties?
Yeah.
And the play at those positions just has not fallen. They've brought in guys that perform at a high level.
Yeah.
You can't get worried about that until it's time for me to worry about that. I'm sorry, I can't.
Yeah.
How about we close it out with this, man? We've talked about offense, we've talked about defense. Who's shining on special teams, man?
I think Reese Veerhoff is still the guy. And that might scare some people when I say that, based on some of the inconsistencies last year. But the reality of it was, he was straight out of high school. Joined him in summer ball, and just kind of was put in a big spot because Marshall didn't have any other options. But from what I hear, got a bigger, stronger leg. That range has increased a little more, because I think that was a little worrisome going down the stretch. Is what was Reese Veerhoff's range, because he hit once from 40 or above, and everything else was inside of that range. So I think his range has kind of been extended. John Galante was high about Reese coming into this year, and John McConnell, again, another redshirt freshman that kind of went through his freshman lumps, and is looking for a bigger sophomore campaign. But they brought in some pieces to help create some of that competition, but I think those 2 are still the guys.
That's interesting, man. We know that John, in-state kid, we were excited when he committed to the Herd. And we saw some struggles in big games, like at Notre Dame. He famously had a really bad punt, and it still didn't affect the Herd. So I feel like if, I've never been in that situation, not a kicker, not a punter, but I feel like if I do that in a big game in South Bend, Indiana, and that still doesn't affect our overall team performance, that's a bounce back moment for me. And I'm thinking, all right, I've got a little grace here. I don't have to be perfect all the time, and my guys are going to pick me up. So springboarding off of those type of experiences, I don't know how you cannot be a little bit excited about coming in and seeing the performance of these guys, right? Reese had some rough kicks. You mentioned he kicked 1 from 40 plus, and I believe that one was from 40. So was the hard line. It was 40, and it was tough. Like he had a tough go of it down at Troy. We needed a field goal, I think, right before half, and that one didn't go our way, but it's still these bounce back moments. These kids have been in the fire now, and you talk about all this other flexibility and these weapons on offense. Maybe they're not put in these clutch situations at all.
Yeah.
Maybe Reese makes his waves on extra points instead of on field goals. But
again, you talk about Reese, and then you look at the Old Dominion game.
Right.
The offense was Reese Veerhoff.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Yeah. That's what I mean. Like these are late season moments where you already did your bounce back. You already had your bounce back from the rough go at Troy, or kicking. I cannot imagine being I'm assuming he was 18, an 18-year-old kid in South Bend, Indiana. Like 6 months previous, I was in high school, and now I'm kicking in front of 78,000 in South Bend, Indiana, and 72,000 of them have no love for you. I mean, what a fire to be in at 18. My biggest worry was, can I get make it to Marshall for move-in day on time? I am not in that boat with those guys. Russ, you have anything else for Luke here before we let him get his afternoon back?
I only got one question. Muffaletta sandwich, yes or no?
Yeah. I was skeptical, but I trust your judgment when it comes to food, and that was my second time in New Orleans, and I'm not a big olive guy, but so it was a tough sell on the olive salad, but I was like, you know what, I'm going to do it, and I think I texted you mid sandwich after like my second bite, and I was like, yeah, this guy was right. So yeah,
mid sandwich.
For anybody out there that doubts, ask me about food. I
Yep.
can set you straight.
yeah.
Honestly, you don't even have to ask him; he'll just offer it up. But
Drink
anyway,
from the fire hose.
yeah,
Yes.
Luke, a couple of weeks from now, we're going to be gearing up here in Huntington for this season opener, and of course,
Sir.
we're going to be over there on the sea lot with a lot of that same great food that you got a taste of back in the spring. We want to see you over there to get your belly full, come hungry, because the same guys are throwing down all that great food for us, and there will be plenty there to eat. So please stop by and get your belly full and say what's up before you get back to the grind of a game day.
Count me in.
Count him. All right, man. Thanks for sitting down with us, man. This was awesome. We'll do this again because it's just always fun when I get to talk to you. And I wish I was.
I'm only surprised that it's taken this long to
I know.
get on the ThunderCast.
I mean, who's the real dick? Me, right? I'm the real.
I feel like I can truly be the Marshall beat writer now that I've been on the most popular.
Well, welcome to the big
Marshall
leagues.
podcast.
Right?
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know. Here we are,
Hey,
just two knuckleheads with mics, and now okay, I know this is all in jest, but when we are making people arrive on the scene, okay, I'll take that. I will take that.
There you go.
I just want to give Luke a shout out for anyone that is not following him. You need to follow him on Twitter. Luke, what's your handle?
It's just at Luke Creasy. There's no space in between my first and last name. So what you see on this screen.
Yeah.
Yep.
LUKECREASY. Follow him. You'll have a ton of knowledge on Marshall athletics, not just football. Also, his articles are can't miss on heralddispatch.com. Find him on there as well. He's an asset that we have here in the community to get all the info that we need.
Yeah. And like I mentioned, just an overall kick-ass guy. So I'll put your Twitter link in the description of this episode so folks can find it really easily. Dude, thanks for sitting down with us. This has been so awesome.
Yeah, no problem. I might have a beard the next time you see me. So
well, I'm hoping. I mean, not that this is a bad look, but man, it was a little shocking. I was expecting expecting the country vibe that I've grown to love from Luke Creasy.
Yeah, my wife also does not know yet. So there's that.
Well, that'll be interesting.
It'll be a nice little surprise when she comes back from work.
Dude, thanks for sitting down with us. We'll give you back your afternoon. Russ, what a great time. We're going to continue on the other side of this break with, I don't know what we're doing, but there will be something for the ThunderCast on the other side of this break. We'll Russ, talking to Luke, got to get you a little amped up and ready for this week one. It's coming up quick anyway. I can't wait to see I hope I see him over at the C lot. How about the freshly shaven and fresh haircut, Luke Creasy? A new vibe going on for Luke.
Yeah. Always good to hear from Luke. He does an amazing job. You know, we talked about that a little bit, but he is someone that we get a lot of. As fans, I don't mean as people on this show, we get a lot of information just reading his articles because of the great job that he does covering all of Marshall athletics. Before that, I followed him for a long time. He covered a lot of stuff in the community for the Herald Dispatch, you know, things with school boards and things like that. He is dedicated and he really dials it in. So an asset for us to have him on the show and give fans, you know, from his experience covering this team, questions that people may have.
Yeah. So again, you can follow him on Twitter at Luke Creasy. No underscores, no dots, no nothing. All one word. LUKECREASY at Luke Creasy. It'll be in the description of the episode to make it really easy to find on Twitter. Russ, for now, let's take it around the herd.
Yeah, and KD, you know, it's a long show, and we had a lot of this stuff was, like I said, could have been a thing or whatever. If it's all right, I'm just going to kind of mow through these and go around. If you got anything to throw in, but there is a lot to cover.
Yeah, I know there's going to be some things that you're going to toss out that I want to talk about, but for the most part, I'm with you. We got to get these folks some of their time. I know they like listening, but dang, 2 hours, that might be pushing it.
Yeah. So football, we'll start there. Watch list. Owen Porter on the Bednarik and the Lombardi watch lists. Micah Abraham on the Jim Thorpe watch list. Rasheen Ali on the Doak Walker watch list. And also, ESPN put out its top 100 preseason football players, and number 57 on the list, Rasheen Ali.
Yeah, I got to talk about these, right? Because
Sure.
these are a big deal. We talked about these watch lists and just being on them from a mid-major school, a G5 school, whatever you want to call it. God, I hope we come up with a better term for this in this post-realignment era. But Owen Porter's getting the flowers, man. People are paying attention. For folks who are out there tweeting at their favorite NFL team, you need to look at this guy. You need to look at Owen Porter. They're looking. They know.
Mhm.
You know, when these guys appear on one list, people are looking. When they appear on multiple lists, people are really looking. These guys have looked. I know scouts have looked long and hard, watched tons of film on Owen Porter. He's on the radar, guys. He is on the radar. For Micah Abraham to show up on the Thorpe Award, you love that too. Guys, these are big deals because these are major college awards. And for our players to be getting recognized on an individual standpoint, and look at all of them. It's Porter, it's Abraham, it's Ali. This tells you that we're in for a special season. The Sun Belt has representatives on a lot of these watch lists across the league, but I don't think very many have as many guys appearing on all these lists as we do, you know? So we could be in for something really special here in Huntington, right? And Ali, the coolest one, being on the Doak Walker Award's awesome. That means they're paying attention. They know what he did in 2021. They are not holding 2022 against him because they know he is a special talent. But landing on 57 of the top 100, that, my friend, is huge because that's not the top 100 mid-major players. That is in all of college football, which is going to be riddled, of course, with Georgia players, Ohio State players, Alabama players, all these top-tier blue-chip players that are going to be first, second round draft picks. And there's our guy, number 57, the second highest rated Sun Belt player behind just behind Grayson McCall, I think landed in the mid-30s. And
ahead of Frank Gore Jr.
Frank Gore was the last one. He was number 100, right? And folks keep making those comparisons. That's fine. I'm not going to do that. We know what we have in Huntington. Frank Gore's a great player, and he's great down in Southern Miss. I'm not going to provide any type of hatred to him, but Ali is just, I think, a better all-around back. It is what it is.
I don't think you could name too many college football teams that would not want him on their roster.
Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. All right, over to volleyball. They were picked amongst the coaches to finish 6th in the East of the Sun Belt Conference for the preseason. Also, fans' first game is against Ohio at 6 p.m. this Friday at the CAM. We just had Ari on. She talked about this. The number one thing that the volleyball players want is butts in seats cheering these athletes on. So get over there if you can this Friday, 6 p.m.
Yep. If you missed the episode, this is why you guys have to subscribe to the YouTube channel, because that was a YouTube exclusive episode with the volleyball season preview with head coach Ari Agnes. And she was a rock star, man.
Over to the
Oh, wait, hold on. All I wanted to say is go check that episode out because you'll get all the insight you want of the movers and shakers on this team, how we rebolstered the roster, what the expectation is, and the fans' first game. I saw yesterday, Russ, I think the giveaway is a big foam finger. So you can get flags at soccer, and then you get some other fan stuff, a giant foam finger for fans' first volleyball match.
Over on the baseball diamond, we picked up commits from 2 right-hand pitchers. We got Rivers Johnson from Anor, South Carolina, and Josh Ferguson from Evansville, Indiana. Also, this Saturday, Prospects Camp up on Route 2 at 9 a.m. Hopefully you've already been aware of this, but if you have someone that is a prospect from the classes from 24 through 27, go on to herdzone.com, click over on baseball. You'll be able to find out all the info and how to register. They have it for two-way players. They've got it for pitchers. They got it for position players. Also, just want to give a real quick shout out. Someone that is on their way right now. I think this is really cool. Ethan Murdoch and his dad are traveling into Huntington from Saskatchewan. What a road trip that is. I have it on good authority that they will probably be listening to this episode at some point, but during the trip, and they are going to stop over and see our Cincinnati Reds play on Friday in Cincinnati, and then they will be here to check out Huntington and get here for school.
Yeah. Wait, before you move on,
Yeah.
mention that they're driving into Huntington because if you'll remember, Ethan's going to play baseball for Marshall. It's not like they're just making a random road trip. So this is one of our guys showing up in Huntington for the first time. Really great story from Saskatchewan over to Kansas and finds his way to Huntington. His dad's been really vocal about their excitement and looking forward to getting to Huntington. So safe travels, guys. Go Reds. Go Herd.
Over on men's soccer, same as with the volleyball, the coaches get together and kind of do their preseason stuff. They are picked second, just 2 points behind number one Kentucky in the Sun Belt Conference. Matthew Bell and Morris Duggan are named to the preseason All Sun Belt Conference team. Fans' first game is this Thursday at 7:15 p.m. against Robert Morris. So, just like on Friday, you'll be going to volleyball. Hopefully, on Thursday, we'll see you over at the vet to take in some men's soccer.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Women's soccer, their season opener is Thursday on the road against Morehead State at 4 p.m. If you can swing that and you're in that area, go over there and cheer on our women's herd team. And then you might be able to make it back in time for that fans' first game, even if it's a little bit late for the men's soccer team. Also, for women, they will go on to host High Point on Sunday, August the 20th at 1 p.m. So, first game of the season at Morehead State, and that's on Thursday at 4 p.m. First home game will be Sunday, 1 p.m. Men's golf named an all-academic team by the Golf Coaches Association of America. And that is awarded to teams with a cumulative GPA for the team 3.0 or higher. This comes on the heels of Tyler Jones being named an All-American Scholar. He had a 3.74 GPA on the year, and what I think is the coolest, he had a 4.0 during golf season.
Wow. Cranked it up during in season.
He got it done on the links and in the books.
Nice.
Yeah. Swim and dive, we have a new assistant coach, Bailey Bonnet. She comes over from UK, where she was also an assistant coach, and she was a all SEC performer over there for the UK Wildcats. Track and field, their staff has been filled to the brim now. Got some new hires. Justin Clickett is here for throws, Ryan McGuffin for jumps, multis, and pole vaults, Teresa Roberts for jumps and sprints, and they join who is returning, Caleb Bowen for distance, Andrea Deem for sprints.
The staff is round out. I think out of all this stuff, really, really happy that Caleb Bowen was retained, because we saw an instant impact when he was named like the head coach last year, and I'm really excited about this. I'll tell you what, man, not the motivation, the excitement for me personally that has started surrounding this track and field program. It's getting pretty, exciting. So, Russ, this was a jam-packed episode. Again, thanks to Luke Creasy for joining us and talking herd ball for a little bit. The breakdown series is now done, and we got season predictions next week. If you got any final words, let me have them. Otherwise, take us out of here.
Just happy birthday, KD, and we are thankful for our fans that make this so much fun. I've interacted with a lot of them over the past week, and because this was a bit of a delayed episode, multiple fans reached out and saying, "Hey, we're going to have an episode this week. You know, you guys got any more of those ThunderCast episodes?" So, we just can't thank you guys enough. You guys make this fun. We're having fun with it, whether anybody's going to listen or not. But anytime there's somebody with their ears on or their eyes glued to the TV or the laptop or their phone, however you watch it, it just makes it all the more worthwhile that we're doing this.
Yeah, it certainly does. I'm very thankful for everyone that spends 2 hours or more a week listening to us talk herd ball and herd athletics. We are two of the most blessed fans in the entire herd universe, without a doubt. Nobody's having more fun than we are right now. And we are just uber thankful. It's all because of the people that click play, and click download. I mean, it's unfathomable sometimes to think about what we were doing a year and a half ago and where we are now, and the contribution that we're making to enhance the fan experience. I think that's the coolest thing. So take us out of here, man.
Yeah, whether you see us at the Joan, whether you see us at the Dot, or whether you see us at any of these fans' first games coming up this week, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go Herd.
Go Herd. It's the ThunderCast. We'll see you next week with season predictions. Later.